It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in.
So you got your real estate license. What year was this roughly?
I got my license in 92. This
92.
is year number 30 for me.
Amazing. So new real estate agent, like what happened from there? Like how did you grow your business? Like what was it like for you in the early days?
Oh, man, the early days were very interesting. First, I made a conscious decision.
Yeah.
I decided I didn't want to sell the average house. I didn't want to sit open houses. I didn't want to drive people around and have people tell me they didn't want to buy it because they didn't like the color of the kitchen. I said I wanted to sell the big stuff. So I just decided to go big, and I started in commercial real estate. I joined a firm called Marcus & Millichap, and was the youngest guy there, the only black guy there, but they were the number one sellers of apartment buildings in the United States. I was like, that's where I want to be. And so I was fortunate enough to be hired as an assistant while I was getting my license done. I was this evil guy's assistant for about 4 months.
Yeah.
And, he just gave me this book called The Apartment Directory and said, start calling. And so my job was just to cold call and find leads for him while I was studying to get my license. And so I got my license quickly, but I generated leads for him. He didn't pay me. All he did was pay for my parking. So it's the funny thing is I quit my job, and at the time at UCLA, I think I was paid a little bit higher than most of my other friends who had graduated at UCLA. I was making like $50,000 at UCLA.
Pretty good back then.
That was really good. Most people were getting like $29,000 a year. I was getting paid $50,000. And I remember when I told my mother that I was quitting my job, and she said, oh, no, why are you quitting your job? I said, I'm going into real estate, Mom. She's like, how much does that pay? I said, nothing. Nothing until you sell something. And she's like, oh, no, don't quit that good job. I was like, I'm doing it, Mom. So I quit my job. I was this guy's assistant. I knew I had to hurry up and get the license because I didn't have time to mess around. I actually had I had a pregnant fiance. Yeah. And so baby on the way. We had just moved into a place that was not cheap. And I didn't have a lot of runway to not perform. So I got my license, and I'll tell you, the early days looked like this. 8 hours of cold calling all day, every day. If you had no escrows, you had no deals going, you had nothing to do but prospect all day. So I locked myself in a conference room and call apartment owners. Are you interested in selling? Are you interested in buying? Are you interested in selling? Literally 7-8 hours a day. Wow. And that's kind of the dues. A lot of people see me today and they see, $4.7 billion in closed transactions, and they see what kind of comes with that level of success. They go, oh, yeah, I ought to get in that real estate game. Why don't I jump in that real estate? I go, okay, but let me tell you about the dues I had to pay to get to this point. And that's what a lot of people don't see. They see the trappings. They see cars and houses and some fancy things here and there, and the glamour shots, but they don't always see the work that really went into it. I wrote 180 offers my first year in the business.
Wow.
Only closed 11 transactions. But the education of that was I got in front of buyers 180 times.
Right.
And so they got to know who I was. I didn't care. Most of their offers were low ball offers. I didn't care. I wanted to meet them. I wanted to write these offers, and that was an education like no other. But that cold calling led to writing 180 offers.
Wow.
Interesting, right?
Wow. So take us to that first transaction that you were able to close.
That first transaction, it's kind of comical.
If you can recall.
I can recall it. I can recall it. It was a 12-unit apartment building in Panorama City. And at the time, Panorama City, for people who don't know LA, is it's a suburb in the valley north of Los Angeles. And at the time, it was a gang-infested, drug-infested, really rough area. And I had a couple of clients who only owned, at the time, I think they only owned 2 apartment buildings. But this one, this is going to trip you out. It was 12 units. And I sold it to them for $240,000. Now, if you can believe those prices, I'll tell you that, just give you some perspective. That same building today is worth, I would say, about $200,000 a unit. So it's worth about $2.4 million. But this was 1992. This
Yeah.
was recession. This was vacancies all over the place. This was the toughest neighborhood in the valley.
Yeah.
20,000 a unit. They bought that building for. Anyway, that was the first building. I think my paycheck that I had to split with the evil guy, I think I made $5,600.
Yeah.
That was it. But that was the first one. And the ironic thing is, I went on to sell that same pair of buyers somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 buildings
Wow.
over the course of our relationship. Now they invest with me in all the things I buy, and it's a great relationship. But yeah, that's how it started.
Wow.
Cold calling, and then going out there selling stuff that was cheap and dirty, and
Yeah.
but you know what? I found a niche in that what we call bread and butter apartment buildings, meaning just working class communities. There were investors who loved that stuff, and I found them. And here's a good strategy story for you. Every morning, they'll tell you how long ago this was. Every morning at the firm, one of the secretaries would go stand on a step stool and write all the new listings in the company on this whiteboard every morning. So that everybody in the firm knew what the new inventory was.
Right.
Well, I took the cubicle right in front of the whiteboard. And as she's writing what the new deals are, I'm calling my buyers, go, hey, there's a new building just hit the market 5 minutes ago. You want to jump on this? And this kind of speed and urgency got my people's attention. And I became known as the guy who would get them the deal fastest and first.
Right.
And it was kind of hot because there were a lot of REOs, a lot of foreclosures being sold then. And the people who were buying were jumping fast, right?
Right.
Well, I wanted to be first guy on the phone with the fresh information. So I sat there and watched her write 22 units in North Hollywood. I hit 22 units in North Hollywood just came on the market 8 minutes ago. It was catchy because like, who tells you something came on the market 8 minutes ago, right?
Right.
So that was kind of my speed was my angle.
Right.
I certainly didn't know a whole lot about selling apartment buildings.
Right.
But I'm learning on the go. But my little niche was I'm gonna get it to you first.
Right.
And that's kind of how I created a cadre of followers and principals who, for what I lacked in knowledge, I made up for in hustle.
Right.
And they appreciated it. And if I didn't know something, it's like, hey, what's the cap rate? I'm thinking, well, I don't even know what a cap rate is. But I never would BS anybody.
Yeah.
I say, you know what? I don't know, but I'll go find out for you. And 8 minutes later, I'm hitting them back going, okay, here's the cap rate.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So never pretended. You know, I was never a used car salesman.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't BS anybody. I would acknowledge my lack of knowledge, and they appreciated that.
Right.
They loved my hustle.
Right. I like that. So a couple things I'm picking up is urgency. Right.
Urgency.
So you talk about, baby on the way. You just quit a job to
income went to zero.
Right. But you wrote 180 offers that first year. You closed 11 transactions, and you said your niche, and you talked about what your niche was, and you also mentioned speed. Yep. Right. Like you wanted to be the first one to put a deal out there for the buyers who you accumulated. So I think people really need to understand that. Like, you need to have urgency. You need to be fast, and you just need to hustle, and you don't need to know everything. Like I like to tell people, know enough to get to the finish line. You don't need to know everything. Right. Know enough, and you can find the rest of the answers. There's information out there. There's people out there who can fill in the gaps for you. So I love that it started off that way.
Well, education is really the most valuable education happens in the field.
Right.
It happens in the streets. I could give you 20 books on how to sell an apartment building or how to be a good salesperson, but you really don't get a feel for that till you get out there and get your head beat in a few times and learn what a hustle really is.
Yeah.
And so experience is the best educator of them all. Something else that was important in what I said was a niche. I found a niche. See, I've owned a couple of brokerages. I've hired and fired probably over 1,000 agents in my career. And what I teach them is that the riches are in the niches. It's like real estate agents who are generalists and try to sell everything all over town usually barely survive. But people who focus on a niche get wealthy. It's a fact. The richest real estate agents I know all could tell you exactly what they specialize in and how they conquered that niche. And I can also show you examples of people in the toughest neighborhoods making 7 figures and people in Beverly Hills and Malibu making 7 figures. And I can also show you people starving in both those same areas.
Right.
But the people who drill down and focus on a thing, that one thing, they can become wealthy at that thing. And I don't care if it's $10 million homes or I got another story for you, $400,000 home. Doesn't matter, right?
What's up, y'all? Sam here from the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. Thank you so much for watching another episode. Definitely take a moment to subscribe. Make sure you like this video. Also, visit our website, blackrealestatedialogue.com, and follow on Instagram at Black Real Estate Dialogue. Talk to you soon.